Hello guys, today we're looking at pivoting. Now pivoting is it can be quite a confusing topic for some people because it's one of them you need to get your head round. And especially when you get into the more advanced stuff and start reversing shells through multiple machines, it can get really mind-bendy pretty quick. So let's just get into an example. So we've got three machines here. We've got a Kali machine in green. We've got another machine in red, another machine. So we've got three machines. The operating system doesn't really matter. But let's just say, for example, Kali's on Linux. Let's just say it's three Linux machines. So we've got a Kali machine on the 10.10.0 network. We've got the middle machine on the 10.10.0 network as well. And then we got the third machine, which is on the 10.10.10 network, which this machine also has. So to make that a bit clearer, so these two share a network and these two share a network, but these two do not share a network. So our Kali machine can communicate to machine 2 through that network, through any means. It can SSH in and do whatever it needs to do, or run Nmap scans or whatever we want. Machine 2 can do the same thing to machine 3 and vice versa. They can communicate like SSH or anything like that. But we've got a bit of a problem where these two can't communicate because they're on completely different networks. There is no way for communication. So to make this more relevant to what we're actually doing, let's just say we're on an engagement, for example. The clients put our Kali machine on their network. We find a vulnerable machine here. We find this machine for our Nmap scans and we manage to get SSH credentials for it so we can log in from our Kali machine. Once we're SSH'd into this machine, we check the network settings and notice that we have a secondary IP assigned. So we can run additional Nmap scans looking for any other targets on this secondary network. So let's say that we're on this machine, we're on machine 2, we run some Nmap scans and we notice that port 8080 is running some web instance on this machine. So from this machine, we can access it. We can run curl, but we might not have any browser functionality on this second machine. It might just only be a terminal, so we can't do much else. So somehow, it'd be nice if we could load up Firefox or any other browser on this machine, but actually get the data from this machine. Now again, because we don't have direct connection, that's not going to be achievable as it is. So we're going to need to proxy our requests through this machine into this machine and then vice versa. So let's say we make a HTTP GET request. We're going to have to pass it through to this machine. This machine's then going to proxy it on for us, and then it's going to return back to this machine, and then this machine is going to return it back to our browser so we can actually view it. And another example, just to try and make this clearer, let's say we also run some scans while we're on this machine, and we notice that SSH is also enabled running on port 22 over here. Again, we can't directly access it because we have no shared network to do so. So we're going to have to start SSH here, pass it through to this machine, use this machine to pass our traffic through to that machine, and then send back the data in the reverse order. So at high level, that's what pivoting is. We're using this intermediary machine here as a jump box. So basically relaying our traffic from this machine over to that machine and vice versa. So that's enough explaining. Let's actually jump into the terminal and have a little look. Right, so now we know what pivoting is at a high level anyway. Let's just look at the lab setup. So let's I'm going to create a few tabs here. Actually, I'm going to close them down. I'm going to create 3 windows. And I'm going to connect to each to show you what each one's doing. So we've got a Kali machine, as we saw in the picture. So we look at the IP of this one. Okay, so here's our physical but virtual interface, and that's running the 10.10.0 network with a host IP of 11. So now if we SSH into the pivot machine via its 10.10.0.5 address and look at its IP. So this one's actually got 3 interfaces, like I said, like we looked at in the drawing. So this is the one the Kali machine is connected to as well, because it's on the same network, 10.10.0 network, just with an IP of 5, a host IP of 5. But as you can see, we've actually got a third interface, and this one's on the 10.10.10 network, and its IP is 50. So that's how I was able to SSH into here, because we're on the same network as that. So if we look at the third machine, which is our internal SSH internal 10.10.10.150, we won't be able to because we've got no direct connection from Kali, but the pivot machine should be able to ping it at least. So we can ping it because we've got access and we're on one of our NICs or one of our interfaces on the same network. So already this creates a bit of a problem, even just demonstrating the connection. So I'm going to jump out of this pivot machine. So one way we can connect, so our first example of a pivot actually is if we do this. So do SSH/J to specify the jump box, which is our pivot machine, which we can connect to via that IP. Oh, and we also need to do the internal and its IP address. So what this is saying is, we're saying SSH, I want to use this pivot machine as a jump box to connect to this internal machine at that IP address. And now it's asking us to sign into the other machine. That's a good sign. And there we go. So now we are on that internal machine. We've pivoted through the pivot machine onto this one using the capital J SSH flag for a jump box. So we can see this one's only got 2 NICs or 2 interfaces, and it's IP 10.10.10.150. Start up a Python server or 8080. Create a new tab. So again, if we try curling that from our Kali machine, the Python server we just set up on port 8080, we're going to have no access to it. So the first method of what we could do is we're going to need to set up a SOCKS. We can set up a SOCKS proxy. So we can set up the SOCKS proxy using a capital D instead of capital J. And then we'll pass in the port we want to use. I'm going to use 1080. And then we pass in the pivot machine because that's the one we're pivoting through. I could type, sign into it. And then that's fine. So we just want to leave this one running now because that's created like a tunnel. That's created a SOCKS proxy for us. But what we could do now is if we go to the browser and if we try going to the IP address of that internal machine on port 8080 where the Python web server is running, see what happens. We get nothing. So we've set up the SOCKS proxy, but we haven't specified that we're going to be proxying through it yet. So what we could do is I've set this up in Foxy Proxy, which is a web extension we can use to set up proxies. So I've got my Burp Suite one there and a proxy, SOCKS5 proxy. If we look at this one, you can give it any title you want, but a type of SOCKS5. Hostname, our local host, because that's what we're listening on, and port 1080, so that's a port we specified. So if we go in here, select our SOCKS proxy, so now traffic that's coming through will hit the proxy and it'll pass it through our SOCKS proxy. So let's just see what happens if we try that again. It's not a very exciting web page, but there we go. We've managed that now funnel our traffic through so we can access the internal web server running this page. I don't know if that's hitting home or not. I mean, it's not, it doesn't seem very exciting, like I say, this page, but that is, I think it's cool. Like the fact that we've managed to do that's brilliant. So now we could enumerate this, because if we were trying to do that, what it's probably worth saying is what we could do as well is there's something called proxy chains we can use. So if we check the configuration file before we do anything at etc proxychains4.conf, have a look at that. So at the bottom we've got SOX4, same as like that was in Foxy proxy settings. This is SOX4, that's fine, not SOX5. Our local host and the IP that we want to specify, so that's 1080, because if we remember when we created this SOX tunnel here, I specified 1080 as the port number, so that's fine. So we'll clear that down. What we can do is do proxy chains and our command and our port, and then we get the response here. Internal admin panel, this service only accessible from the internal network, same as like it says here. We didn't specify proxy chains, just ran it like we normally would. We've got no access because again, we're trying to, it won't work because we're trying to communicate with a machine that we don't have direct access to. But yeah, so that's why it's good to set up the web page like this, because if you were trying to do everything through curl and just enumerate the pages and see what was going on, and it was just, it would take forever. So the fact that we got this set up now, we could interact with that fully via the browser, which is brilliant. So another thing we can do as well, because we may not want to use proxy chains and we may not want to use SSHD, is for dynamic port forwarding. So we don't have to manually specify each port. But if we don't want to mess about with proxy chains and web proxies to access the website on that internal server, we can use a static bind, SSH-L. The port we want to use to listen on our machine, so on our Kali machine, we're going to listen on 1212. That could be obviously anything else you want. The IP address of the machine that we can't access, or where, you know, that third machine where the web server's running, and its port, which I think was 8080, and then the machine, and then the IP of the machine we'll use to pivot through. Now, just before I click enter on that, if we go to the browser and go to our local host on the 1212, so nothing, so we can't access it. We click enter here, so sign in, and then should be able to refresh that and get the page. So yeah, so we've not had to do any sort of weird proxying with Foxy proxy or anything like that. Not had to use proxy chains. We've just manually specified the port bind ourselves. So again, that's 1212 for the port we're going to use on. So actually, let me just run that quickly to show you. I'll open up another tab, and then we have a look at our connections. We should see that our local, so that's our local address, and there's the port we've set up, and there you go. So that's the port we're listening on. So we'll keep that as a precursor to the rest of the videos, because they are going to be ramping up in complexity a little bit. And as always, I hope you've enjoyed the video, you found it useful, and I will catch you in the next one.